"Sir, please wait." The man had already pushed his chair back and reached for his coat when the black waitress spoke. The entire restaurant froze. Before anyone could react, she walked to the door and locked it. The metallic click of the bolt sliding into place echoed through Marlow's Bistro like a gunshot. 43 pairs of eyes turned toward her. The man at table 7, gray sweater, worn jeans, 3-day stubble, stood perfectly still, his hand hovering over the back of his chair. No one breathed. If you believe injustice should never go unanswered, stay with this story. The morning light had barely touched the sidewalk when Shanice Williams pushed through the back entrance of Marlow's Bistro. Her shoes, the only pair that didn't hurt after a double shift, squeaked against the kitchen tile. She was 40 minutes early. She was always early, not because she loved the job, because being late gave them ammunition. Morning, Shanice. Marcus, the line cook, didn't look up from his prep station. He never did anymore. Not since the last time he'd defended her and lost a week's worth of shifts. Morning. She tied her apron with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 5,000 times. The black fabric was faded at the edges, the restaurant's gold logo barely visible. They'd promised new uniforms 8 months ago. They'd promised a lot of things 8 months ago. Shanice moved through the empty dining room, her trained eye catching every imperfection. Table 12 had a wobbly leg 3rd week running. The hostess stand had a crack in the wood that maintenance kept forgetting to fix. The air conditioning rattled like it was breathing its last. She pulled out her notebook, a small black journal she kept in her apron pocket. On today's page, she wrote, November 14th. Hostess stand still broken. AC unit failing. Table 12 unstable. It was the same notebook where she'd been documenting everything else. The door chimed. Shanice looked up. Gerald Crenshaw? Manager? Tyrant? Man who smiled like a politician and squeezed his staff like lemons. Strode in wearing a suit that cost more than Shanice made in 2 months. He saw her immediately, and his face did that thing it always did. A micro-expression of annoyance, quickly replaced by professional neutrality. Shanice, you're here early. Just preparing for the day, Mr. Crenshaw. He walked past her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive. Suffocating. We're expecting a busy lunch. I need you sharp. No mistakes. Yes, sir. And Shanice. He turned back, his smile thin as paper. Remember what we discussed. You're on probation. One more complaint. He didn't finish. He never did. The threat lived in the silence. She nodded, keeping her face carefully blank. Inside, she counted. 73 days of probation. For an accusation that was never proven. For defending myself when a customer called me a racial slur. Gerald disappeared into his office. Shanice opened her notebook and wrote. Threatened again. No cause given. By 11 a.m., the restaurant was half full. The lunch rush crawled in like it always did. Businessmen in expensive suits, ladies who lunched, tourists who'd read about Marlow's in some guide that was 5 years out of date. Shanice worked her section with mechanical precision. Smile. Recommend. Serve. Clear. Smile again. Table 4 sent back their salmon twice. Table 8 asked for separate checks, then changed their minds 3 times. Table 11's wife snapped her fingers at Shanice like she was summoning a dog. She swallowed it all. At 12:47 p.m., the door opened again. The man who entered looked like he'd wandered in by accident. Gray sweater with a small hole near the collar. Jeans that had seen better years. Work boots that had seen better decades. His hair was slightly too long, graying at the temples. He had the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. Nothing remarkable, nothing memorable. Except his eyes. Shanice noticed his eyes immediately. Sharp. Assessing. The kind of eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. Jennifer, the hostess, 22, blonde, working here while she figured things out. Wrinkled her nose slightly as the man approached. Just one. Her voice carried a note of skepticism, as if she doubted he could afford to eat here. Yes, please. Jennifer grabbed a menu with visible reluctance. This way. She led him past the good tables, the ones by the window with the view, the ones reserved for people who looked like they belonged. She walked him all the way to the back to table 7, the corner table. The table they gave to people they didn't want other customers to see. Shanice watched this unfold while carrying a tray of drinks to table 9. She'd seen this choreography before. She'd experienced this choreography before. The subtle redirection, the unspoken hierarchy, the way certain people got the best service and certain people got what was left over. Jennifer dropped the menu on table 7 without ceremony. "Your server will be right with you." She walked away quickly, as if proximity might be contagious. Gerald materialized beside Shanice at the service station. "Table 7 is yours." "I'm already covering 6 tables, Mr. Crenshaw. Emma only has 3. Emma's tables tip better." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. Simple fact. Unassailable truth. "Table 7 is yours." Shanice looked at the man sitting alone in the corner. She looked at Gerald's face. That smile that wasn't really a smile. She thought about the notebook in her pocket, the evidence she'd been gathering, the careful documentation of every slight, every inequality, every stolen dollar. "Yes, sir." She approached table 7 with her customer service smile firmly in place. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Marlow's. Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man looked up from the menu. For a split second, their eyes met, and Shanice felt something shift. A recognition, not of a person but of a type. He was studying her the way she studied everyone, looking for the truth beneath the surface. "Just water, please." His voice was quiet, measured, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "I'll give you a few minutes with the menu." "No need." He handed it back to her. "I'll have the soup and sandwich combo. House soup, whatever that is. White bread is fine." Shanice blinked. The soup and sandwich combo was $8.95, the cheapest meal on the menu. Most people ordered it when they were trying to stretch their last $20. She wrote it down. "Anything else?" "That's all. I'll get that started for you." As she walked away, Shanice felt his eyes on her back. Not in a creepy way, in a curious way, like he was waiting for something. At the service station, Emma, blonde, perky, never had to cover the back tables, giggled as she entered an order. "Did you see that guy? Looks like he wandered in from a homeless shelter." Shanice didn't respond. She put in the order and went back to her other tables. But her mind was working, because she had seen that man before. Not in person, but in a photograph. In an article she'd read 3 months ago while researching labor laws and worker rights on her phone during her unpaid 15-minute break. The article had been about corporate accountability, about billionaires who'd made their fortunes and what they did with their power. There'd been a photo, grainy, taken from a distance. A man in casual clothes touring a factory floor. A man who reportedly showed up to board meetings in jeans. A man who'd built an empire by seeing what others overlooked. Can't be him, Shanice thought. Why would he be here? But the eyes were the same. Sharp. Assessing. Waiting. She brought his water. No lemon. No ice. Room temperature from the tap. She brought his soup, the day-old vegetable broth they served to the cheap seats. She brought his sandwich, white bread, thin deli meat, no garnish. She set it down with none of the flourishes she usually used. "No, enjoy your meal," with a smile. "No, let me know if you need anything else. Just service." Borde. Minimum. Functional. The kind of service she'd received 1,000 times in her life. At restaurants where they looked at her skin and decided she wouldn't tip. At stores where they followed her, assuming she'd steal. At every place that treated her like she was less until she proved she wasn't. The man, if he was who she thought he was, watched her go. He ate slowly, deliberately. He didn't complain about the lukewarm soup or the stale bread. He didn't ask for extra anything. He just ate. And Shanice watched him from across the room, refilling water glasses and clearing plates, her mind racing. If you're really him, she thought, then you know exactly what's happening right now. You know how people like me get treated in places like this. The question is, what are you going to do about it? At 1:15 p.m. he finished eating. He flagged her down with a small gesture. Shanice approached. Can I get you anything else? Just the check, please. She pulled it from her apron. She'd already calculated it. $8.95 plus tax. $9.64 total. He looked at it, reached into his pocket, pulled out a $10 bill and change. He counted out exactly $9.64. No tip, not a penny over. He stood up, reached for his coat, and Shanice made her decision. Sir, please wait. He paused, hand on his coat. The restaurant froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Shanice walked past him. Every eye in the room followed her. She could feel Gerald's stare like a laser burning into her back. She reached the front door. She turned the bolt. The lock clicked. Someone gasped. At table 4, a woman clutched her purse. At table 8, a man reached for his phone. Gerald exploded from his office. Shanice, what the hell do you think you're? I need everyone to stay calm, Shanice said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It had the weight of someone who'd been silent for too long and had finally decided to speak. This will only take a few minutes. Unlock that door right now, or I'm calling the police. Gerald's face had gone purple. Veins stood out on his forehead. Please do, Shanice said. I think they'll be very interested in what I have to say. She turned to face the man from table 7. He stood perfectly still, coat in hand, his expression unreadable. You're Alexander Hartwell, Shanice said. Not a question. A statement. The room went silent. Alexander Hartwell, billionaire, tech entrepreneur, self-made man who'd started with nothing and built a fortune by investing in overlooked communities. The man who showed up to shareholders' meetings in jeans. The man who'd been photographed eating at food trucks and shopping at thrift stores. The man who'd written an op-ed 6 months ago about systemic inequality in service industries. Emma's mouth fell open. Jennifer's face went white. Gerald looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Alexander Hartwell's expression didn't change. Yes, I recognized you from an article I read about corporate responsibility, about how the wealthy have an obligation to see injustice and act. Shanice's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I wanted to see if you actually meant it. Shanice, unlock that door and apologize right now. Gerald started forward. Stay where you are, Mr. Crenshaw. Shanice didn't take her eyes off Hartwell. I treated you exactly the way I get treated. The way people who look like me get treated every single day. Bad table. Bad service. No courtesy. No extras. No respect. She paused. You didn't complain. You didn't demand better. You just accepted it. The way we're expected to accept it. Hartwell set down his coat slowly. Go on. Shanice reached into her apron. She pulled out the black notebook. This restaurant has been stealing from its workers for 18 months. Wage theft. Illegal paycheck deductions. Forcing us to pay for broken dishes out of our own pockets. Firing people who complain. She opened the notebook, her fingers steady now. I have dates, times, names, amounts. I have testimony from 6 current and former employees. I have photos of the scheduling board where Mr. Crenshaw gives the good shifts to certain people and the bad shifts to others, and we all know the pattern. She looked at Gerald. His face had gone from purple to gray. I have recorded conversations where Mr. Crenshaw threatened to fire me if I reported a customer who called me a racial slur. I have documentation of the probation he put me on. Probation with no end date, no stated cause, just a permanent threat hanging over my head. This is slander. Gerald sputtered. You're fired. I'm not finished. Shanice's voice cut through his like a blade. I've been documenting all of this because I've been preparing to file a complaint with the Department of Labor. Because I've been gathering evidence for a civil rights lawsuit. Because I've been doing everything the legal way. The right way. Even though I knew it would take months and cost money I don't have and probably get me blacklisted from every restaurant in this city. She turned back to Hartwell. But then you walked in, and I thought, what if I could make someone see it? Not read about it, not hear about it secondhand, but experience it, feel it, understand it. Her eyes locked with his. So I tested you. I gave you the treatment we get. And you sat there and took it without a word. Just like we do. Every single day. The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning rattle. So my question, Mr. Hartwell, is this. Now that you've felt it, are you going to do what you wrote about in that article? Or was it just words? Hartwell stood there for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket. Everyone tensed. He pulled out his phone. He made a call. Rebecca? Alexander. I need you to conference in David from legal and Martha from HR. Yes, right now. Because I'm standing in a restaurant where I've just witnessed systematic labor violations and racial discrimination. And I want a team here within the hour. He paused. Marlow's Bistro, downtown location. And Rebecca? Bring the contracts. I think we might be acquiring a new property. He ended the call. He looked at Gerald, who had gone completely white. You're finished, Hartwell said simply. Not just here. Everywhere. By the time my legal team is done documenting what you've done, you'll never manage so much as a lemonade stand. He turned to Shanice. You have copies of everything in that notebook? Digital copies. Uploaded to the cloud. Passwords protected. I've been learning a lot about evidence preservation in my free time. The corner of Hartwell's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. I wrote that op-ed because I was tired of watching people with power ignore injustice. But I never expected someone would actually test me on it. He paused. You could have just approached me. Asked for help. No, Shanice said quietly. Because then you would have been the hero and I would have been the victim. I needed to show you that I'm not helpless. I'm strategic. I'm prepared. I've been fighting this battle on my own because that's what we do. We fight. We organize. We document. We resist. She held up the notebook. I didn't need someone to save me, Mr. Hartwell. I needed someone to witness what I've already been doing. To validate that it's real. That it matters. Hartwell looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're right, he said. And I apologize for assuming otherwise. Gerald made a desperate lunge for his office. I'm calling my lawyer. Your lawyer can meet you at the Department of Labor hearing, Hartwell said, along with the EOC investigator who'll be reviewing Miss Williams's complaint. Oh, and the IRS agent who'll be very curious about those cash payments you've been pocketing from the register. Gerald froze mid-step. You didn't think I ate that entire meal without noticing? Hartwell's voice was soft, deadly. I counted 6 violations of health code, 3 violations of labor law, and 1 manager who took a $100 bill from the register and put it in his wallet while everyone was distracted by this scene. Every head swiveled to Gerald. Security footage will confirm it, Hartwell continued. I assume you have cameras? Of course you do. You probably use them to spy on your staff. Make sure they're not stealing. Funny how people who steal always assume everyone else is stealing too. Gerald's face had gone beyond gray to a sick green. You can't. This is entrapment. No, Shanice said. Entrapment is when law enforcement tricks someone into committing a crime. This is just consequences. You've been breaking the law for 18 months. I documented it. Mr. Hartwell witnessed it. And now you're going to face justice. The front door handle rattled. Someone outside was trying to get in. That's probably your 1 o'clock reservation, Shanice said to Gerald. Should I tell them you're closed? This restaurant isn't closed. Gerald's voice cracked. You're just a server. You can't. Actually, Hartwell interrupted. As of about 3 minutes ago, when I texted my acquisition team, this restaurant is under review for purchase. Pending, of course, on a full audit of its practices. Which means, Mr. Crenshaw, that you are currently managing a property that may very shortly belong to me. He paused. And I don't employ thieves. You can't do this. I can. I am. And what's more, Hartwell pulled out his phone again, opened his email, and turned it to show Gerald the screen. I'm CCING every business association, restaurant group, and hospitality network in this city. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know what happened here. Good luck finding work after that. Gerald's knees seemed to buckle. He grabbed the hostess stand for support and it tilted under his weight. The same stand that had been broken for weeks. Marcus appeared from the kitchen, followed by 3 other staff members. They stood behind Shanice, silent solidarity. "We all got her back," Marcus said quietly. "You want to fire her, you fire all of us. And we all got copies of that notebook," added Teresa, one of the other servers. "She shared it with us last week. We all signed affidavits. You think this is just one angry employee? Think again." Gerald looked around the restaurant, at the customers watching, at the staff united against him, at Hartwell, phone in hand, documenting everything. His empire of petty cruelty was collapsing in real time. "I'll fight this," he whispered. "With what?" Shanice asked. "Your reputation? Your credibility? Your lawyer who's going to abandon you the second he sees the evidence." She opened her notebook to a marked page. "July 23rd. You shorted my paycheck by $47. Told me it was for a broken plate. I never broke any plate. You just wanted to see if I'd fight back." She flipped pages. "September 2nd. You gave Emma the Saturday night shift even though I had seniority. When I asked why, you said, and I quote, 'Some faces are better for the dinner crowd.'" Another page. "October 15th. Customer at table 6 called me the N-word. Asked to speak to the manager. You told me I was being too sensitive, and that customer didn't mean it that way." She closed the notebook. "I have 68 more entries like that, and that's just my experience. Teresa has 43. Marcus has 51. Should I keep going?" Gerald said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Hartwell's phone buzzed. "That's my team. They're 10 minutes out." He looked at Shanice. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. What do you want to happen here? Because I can make several things happen. I can shut this place down. I can clean house and hire new management. I can acquire it and turn it into something else entirely. But before I do anything, I need to know what justice looks like to you." Shanice took a breath. This was the moment. The question she'd been asking herself for months. What did she actually want? "I want the workers protected," she said. "Everyone who's been hurt by this system, I want them made whole. Back pay, restitution, clean records, and I want them to have a voice in what happens next." She paused. "This restaurant could be something good. The food is decent when it's not day old. The location is perfect. The staff, the real staff, the ones who actually work here, we know this business inside and out. We know the neighborhood. We know the customers." She looked around the room. What this place needs isn't a savior. It needs accountability. It needs to be built on respect instead of exploitation. It needs to be a place where everyone who works here can afford to eat here. Where the color of your skin doesn't determine which table you get or how much you make or whether you get believed when someone mistreats you. She met Hartwell's eyes. "I don't want charity, Mr. Hartwell. I want change. Real change. The kind that lasts." Hartwell smiled. Actually smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." 3 weeks later, Shanice stood in front of Marlow's Bistro. Except it wasn't Marlow's anymore. The new sign read, "Foundation Bistro, community-owned, worker-led." The windows were clean. The hostess stand was fixed. The air conditioning had been replaced. And inside, her staff was preparing for the grand reopening. The deal had been unprecedented. Hartwell had acquired the property, then immediately restructured it as a worker cooperative. Every employee who'd been wronged got shares, profit sharing, voting rights, real ownership. Shanice had been elected manager by unanimous vote. Not because Hartwell appointed her, because her co-workers chose her. Gerald Crenshaw was gone. The Department of Labor had launched a full investigation. The EOC had opened a case. Last Shanice heard, he was facing $250,000 in fines and permanent disbarment from managing food service establishments. She didn't feel triumph. She felt closure. Inside, Marcus was training 2 new line cooks. Teresa was mentoring a new server. Emma had quit the day the ownership changed. Said she didn't feel comfortable with the new structure. Nobody missed her. The menu had been redesigned. Same quality food, but affordable. No more $45 steaks for tourists. Instead, $12 lunch specials that actual neighborhood people could afford. $8.95 soup and sandwich combos that were made fresh. Served with respect, no matter who ordered them. The back table, table 7, had been moved to the window. Shanice walked inside, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. Her phone buzzed. A text from Hartwell. Good luck today. I'll be there at 1 p.m. Don't give me the good table. She smiled. The grand reopening was chaos in the best possible way. Lines out the door. Press coverage. Community members who'd never felt welcome at Marlow's now packing the tables. Families. Students. Workers from the factory down the street. Shanice moved through the room with the same efficiency she'd always had. But everything felt different. She wasn't surviving. She was building. At 1:03 p.m., Alexander Hartwell walked through the door. Gray sweater. Worn jeans. Work boots. Jennifer. The new Jennifer. A woman from the neighborhood who'd waitressed her way through nursing school. Greeted him with a genuine smile. Welcome to Foundation Bistro. Just one today. Yes, please. She grabbed a menu. Started to lead him toward the window tables. Actually, Hartwell said, I'd like table 7, if it's available. Shanice watched from across the room. Caught his eye. Nodded. Jennifer showed him to the corner table, now positioned by the large window with the good light and the view of the street where real people lived real lives. Shanice approached with 2 menus. Good afternoon, she said. Welcome to Foundation. Can I start you with something to drink? Just water is fine. Still or sparkling? Surprise-me. She smiled. I'll give you a minute with the menu. No need. He handed it back. I'll have the soup and sandwich combo. Whatever soup is fresh today. And the good bread this time. All our bread is good now, Shanice said. We don't have different tiers. Everyone gets the same quality. That's kind of the whole point. Then I'll have that. She wrote it down. Anything else? Just one thing. He looked up at her, and there was something in his expression. Respect, maybe. Acknowledgement. Thank you for testing me. For not making it easy. For demanding that I see instead of assuming I already did. Shanice held his gaze. Thank you for passing the test. For listening. For using your power to amplify instead of overshadow. You didn't need me to save you. No, she agreed. But I needed someone to bear witness. To validate that what I was experiencing was real. That it mattered. That it was worth fighting for. She paused. And I needed to know that people with power could actually be trusted to do the right thing. You restored something I thought I'd lost. What's that? Hope, she said simply. That change is possible. That justice isn't just a word. That sometimes, when you speak truth to power, power actually listens. Hartwell nodded slowly. I have a feeling this place is going to change the whole neighborhood. That's the plan. She tucked her notepad. A new one, leather-bound, given to her by the staff, back into her apron. One meal at a time. One fair wage at a time. One moment of dignity at a time. She started to walk away, then paused and looked back. By the way, Mr. Hartwell? Yes. If you leave exact change again, I'm locking the door. He laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes from the belly. Noted, he said. I'll tip appropriately. Shanice smiled and went to put in his order. As she walked through the restaurant, her restaurant, their restaurant, she passed table after table of people being served with respect. People who could afford to eat here. People who worked here and could now afford to live here. At the service station, Marcus caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. Teresa was laughing with a customer at table 5. The new cook, a young man who'd been unemployed for 6 months, was plating food with the careful attention of someone who'd finally been given a chance. Shanice pulled out her leather notebook and wrote, November 30th. Grand reopening. Full house. 0 complaints. Everyone treated equally. This is what justice looks like. She closed the notebook and went back to work. Outside, the sun hit the new sign at just the right angle, making the words glow. Foundation Bistro, community owned. Worker led. And below it, in smaller letters, where everyone gets the good table. That evening, after the last customer left and the staff had finished cleaning, Shanice stood alone in the dining room. She walked to table 7, ran her hand along the smooth wood. She thought about the moment she'd locked that door, the terror and exhilaration of finally taking action after months of silence. The gamble that had somehow paid off. But it wasn't luck, she realized. It was preparation meeting opportunity. It was years of injustice building into determination. It was the choice to be strategic instead of reactive, to be smart instead of simply angry. She'd been told her whole life that she didn't have power, that people like her had to wait for people like him to notice, to care, to act. But that wasn't true. She'd had power all along. The power to document, to organize, to refuse, to demand, to lock the door and say no, not anymore, not today, not ever again. The power wasn't in being rescued. It was in being seen, not as a victim, not as a charity case, not as someone who needed saving, but as someone who'd been saving herself all along. Someone who'd just been waiting for the world to catch up. Shanice turned off the lights and locked the door behind her. A different kind of locking this time. The kind that meant we're closed. Come back tomorrow. We'll be here. We're not going anywhere. And as she walked down the street toward home, she thought about all the other Shanices out there. In other restaurants, other stores, other offices, other places where injustice lived in the space between what was said and what was done. She thought about her notebook, now photocopied and shared with 3 other worker organizing groups in the city. She thought about the foundation she was starting with her share of the co-op profits, a fund to help service workers document labor violations, to provide legal support, to turn silence into strategy and strategy into change. She thought about the next Gerald Crenshaw and the next and the next. And she thought about all the people who would have notebooks of their own now. Evidence, documentation, proof. The world was full of locked doors, but it was also full of people who knew how to pick locks. And sometimes the greatest act of resistance was simply refusing to be invisible, refusing to be silent, refusing to accept that this was just how things were, and having the courage to say, watch what happens when I stop asking for permission to be treated like a human being. Watch what happens when I demand it. Watch what happens when we all do it together. Shanice Williams went home that night not as a waitress, not as a victim, not as someone whose story ended with rescue, but as a woman who'd locked a door and changed her world. And tomorrow she'd unlock it again on her own terms. That was the real revolution, not the moment of intervention, but the years of preparation before it, and the decades of transformation that would follow.